Oh, welcome very much to Conversations. And again, it's a pleasure to welcome to the program for a second time a genuine pioneer and continuing right up to the present advocate and producer of and a person very familiar with all things media, particularly film and television. He's been on the scene in a very singularly important way for a very long time. His name is Sumner Jules Glimcher, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to Conversations for a second time, Sumner. Welcome very much to Conversations in Manhattan Network.
Thank you, Harold. One of the pleasures of coming here, since I am a historian, an author of, I'm working, I don't know if I told you, I'm now working on my third book, and talking to people about my second book, which is the one I showed when I was here last. But with a long history. I got out of college, and I came to New York when I thought I was ready for the big time.
That was Harvard College?
I went to Harvard. I was fortunate enough, and you know that, I may have told you, I went to Harvard by a mistake. I wanted to go to MIT, but they wouldn't take me.
What did you want to study? Did you know what you wanted? What, you're 18 or 19 or something, yeah?
No. I was 20-something because I'd been in the Army.
Oh, you had served in the Army, right.
I was in the Army.
You were in the Ardennes.
3 years in the Ardennes forest, and I was shot during the Battle of the Bulge, which was a blessing, because if you were in the Battle of the Bulge, you had two options. You were either killed or wounded. So being wounded was, you know, they used to call it the $1 million wound because it took you out of combat. It took me 4 months to recover. It was sort of a miracle, all the things that happened. But anyhow, I made it out of the Battle of the Bulge. They sent me back to Wales. It took me 4 months to learn how to walk. I was shot with an 88 millimeter shell that...
It was a close call for you. It was a close call. I mean, we almost lost you there.
You almost lost me, and I almost lost my leg because gangrene was anyhow. Long story, but the gist of it is to cut to the bone. I lived through it, and because I was wounded and not killed, it was a blessing. Now, so I was 20. I was 20. 21. I guess maybe 22. When I got out of the Army, and I started Harvard. And I went through Harvard in 2 years because I had something called Army Specialized Training Program. When I first went into the Army, they gave you IQ tests. You had to have an IQ of 110 to go to officer training school. But something more prestigious was called ASTP, Army Specialized Training Program. And if you had an IQ of 115, which I had, they sent you to college, and they said you're going to go to an accelerated program, and you're going to get a degree and a commission as a second lieutenant.
Wow, okay.
Well, that sounded great, much better than...
Be an officer than an enlisted man, yeah.
So they sent me to Washington University in St. Louis. I spent 9 months there, which turned out to be the equivalent of a year and a half of normal college because it was accelerated. And then Patton, who was losing infantrymen by the hundreds or thousands as he raced across the northern France, this was after D-Day. D-Day was June 6, 1944. Patton was losing troops, and he desperately needed infantrymen. So the Army, in its wisdom, took 120,000 of us, who were in ASTP with the highest IQ in the Army, and said, you're going to get basic infantry training and go into combat. And they sent us. I went to basic infantry training, where you went on 25-mile hikes, and you went through what they called
basic training.
Basic training. You would go through what they called an obstacle course.
I had to do that.
You crawled on your belly.
Yes, right. Over live machine gun fire.
And 30 inches above your head, above the ground, were live machine gun bullets.
I remember that.
Which trained you to keep your head
And they made you
down.
go in a room with tear gas, too. I remember that. That was to take the gas mask off, all that. I didn't like it at all, but I mean, Yeah. But I was in peacetime, so it was a different thing. Yeah.
Anyhow, so that brought me to the ETL.
You were drafted then, or did you go in voluntarily?
Well, I volunteered.
You did, yeah. The Second War was a whole different proposition.
Everybody loved World War II.
Yeah,
I could have been. I was working when I got out of high school. I got a job working at the Raytheon Corporation in Boston, or Waltham, and I was working on radar, this new secret weapon the Brits had developed.
Right.
And my boss, who was an MIT graduate, and Norman Weil, said to me, "Sumner, I can have you deferred because you are working on this secret radar."
That's how you wanted to go to MIT after you came out, right? And you went to Harvard instead.
Yeah, I wanted to go to MIT,
because you had the training in engineering.
They wouldn't take me because of ASTP. They told me the only transfer students they took were graduate level, so I couldn't go to MIT. So I said to the guy, "What should I do?" He said, "Why don't you try Harvard?" I tried Harvard.
And you got accepted. Into what? Liberal arts, or where did you study at Harvard?
I majored in nuclear physics.
Nuclear physics, really?
Because I thought I was going to be a physicist. But I found out
you were doing the sciences.
Well, I found out when I started Harvard, there were 6. We went to. I was told to report to Memorial Hall on the 1st of June, 1946. And I get to the steps of Memorial Hall, and they're handing out copies of the Harvard Crimson.
Oh yeah.
And it says new class accepted. 1,600 men, no girls, of course, no women, right? 1,600 men accepted out of 65,000 applications.
Right.
But luckily, I was one of those. Anyhow, I go to Harvard, and I thought I was going to be an engineer, and we had just exploded a couple of nuclear weapons, and I thought that nuclear physics would be a good field to study in. But I had a terrible shock when I got to Harvard. I found I was, for the first time in my life, in a class where everybody was smarter than I was. And it was a real shock. And I had real problems getting passing grades in physics. And a very dear friend of mine, Hartford Gunn, who later became...
I knew Hartford Gunn. I did a program with him.
Hartford Gunn later became the chair of WGBH in Boston, and ultimately the chairman of PBS. Hartford was a classmate, and he said, "Sumner, why don't you try joining the radio station?"
Right.
That just blew me away. You sat in front of a microphone. Harvard's radio station is actually a commercial station and can be heard throughout Boston. And I thought, this is what I want to do, broadcasting.
You knew it right away, right?
Instantly. Instantly, because television was on the horizon. This was 1946.
Right.
I got out of Harvard in 48, and I was offered 2 jobs. I was offered a job testing missiles for the government because of my major, White Sands, New Mexico, for $75 a week. And I was offered a job at a little radio station in Boston for $35 a week. Of course, there was no question.
Right.
So I took that job. I held it for 3 months until one time I talked back to the boss. And I got fired.
I'm shocked.
Shocked. I got fired, and I decided it was time for the big time. I came to New York, and I got a job as a page at NBC.
That's when you got into the page at NBC, right?
January 1949.
Right.
Television was so primitive. In January of 49, we went on the air with Howdy Doody at 5:30 in the afternoon.
Go ahead.
We got off the air at 9:30 at night.
Right.
The entire broadcast day was 4 hours, and the rest of the day there was something called the test pattern.
Let me break in here for a minute, because I'm a bit younger than you, a little bit. But in 1946, I would have been 11 or 12 or something, like that. But next door was a dentist, and and during the war, it had all been war production at Willow Run, planes, tanks, that kind of thing. So there hadn't been new automobiles or anything, but they were sort of adventuresome. They got the first Dodge in 1946 that came off the line it's a new automobile rather than an old one. You had to have and they also got a television set.
Black and white.
No, listen, this is the way it was. I can remember. I may be wrong. It gets cloudy. But they had a television set that they had in anticipation of television, and they had it in the corner of the living room there, and they had an Indian head test pattern. That's all there was on the screen, if I remember right. There was nothing but, and we would look at the test pattern, the television was coming, then finally came Howdy Doody and all that kind of stuff. But that's how new it was. That was the beginning of television.
12 inches.
Kuka, Fran, and Ollie and that. Yeah, round. I think it was round. Yeah,
and black and white, and the rest of the time in New York, you had this test pattern. Anyhow,
yeah. So you were a page.
I was a page. They hired 50 guys as pages.
What was the criteria by which they hired the people who were there?
Well, we were all
personable
college graduates, and we were supposed to be executive trainees.
Oh, you were in training
and then they hired 50 girls.
Yes,
and they were guides, and the girls took tours. The tourists came and they took tours of the studio.
And the guys were all selected because they were all handsome and strong and handsome movie star type looks, right?
I suppose looks. I had hair at that time. I suppose we were attractive looking. But the girls, of course, they were
all knockouts.
Oh,
right?
my God.
Yeah,
stunning.
right.
So if you can imagine 50 young
You're
guys.
22 years old or
and 50 young, beautiful women. My introduction to television was wonderful. I spent 6 years at NBC. I ultimately was the production manager of the Sid Caesar show.
Yeah, wow. Show of shows? Was that a
show of shows?
Yeah, right.
And for one season, I was the production manager. And believe it or not, they paid us for this.
Wow. Yeah. You would have paid to be there, you know.
Yeah,
you could have well paid.
I was a full-time.
Because you could listen in on their rehearsals. Carl Reiner and Sid Caesar. And
Carl Reiner, Mel Brooks, Neil Simon.
Neil Simon, too, yeah.
And they all would closet themselves in Sid's office in the morning.
Yeah.
You'd hear these guffaws of laughter. And then after lunch, we would go into the rehearsal room, and Sid and Imogene would go through their routines.
Imogene Coca,
and we were to watch. That was our job to watch.
You could have paid money to be there. Right. And you were getting paid for it.
It was great.
But you were right in the beginning of television. That was the point.
I learned network operations. I learned programming. I learned production. I had a series of... Because jobs were opening up because we went from the 4 hours when I began to, of course, around the clock. One day, Pat Weaver called me and he said, I'm starting a new show. It's going to be called The Today Show. It's coming from Chicago with a guy named Dave Garrow.
Right. He did the monkey.
I had to hire 12 assistant directors to cover the film studios and master control. At that time, I was in charge of network operations.
Wow.
And it was amazing, the new things we were learning.
It was really taking off. Right?
Television took off during that period.
Right.
And then, of course, production all moved to the West Coast. And I was offered a job at Radio Free Europe in Munich, and I loved travel. I was fluent in German. I had been in military government as an interpreter, investigator, and a prosecutor.
In the Army you had done that?
When the war was over, I saw the day that the war was over, Stars and Stripes, I was in a replacement depot just outside of Paris. I had spent 4 months in Wales learning how to walk again.
You had a terrible wound.
I had 4 big holes in my leg from an 88 millimeter shell. So I'm back on my way. I'm back outside of Paris in a replacement depot, and it says the Germans surrender, and underneath that there was a tiny paragraph. It said military government seeks German-speaking interpreter.
Now, you spoke German because of the family or something, your background, or how did you study it, or how did you come to learn German?
In 1939, I started high school.
Yeah.
And you had to take a language.
Yeah.
And you had a choice of French, German, or Latin.
Yeah.
Now, in 1939, if we can remember what Hitler was up to, I thought, well, maybe German will be a good language to learn.
Yeah.
So I signed up for 3 years of German.
Oh, I see.
Now, 3 years of German in high school taught me to say things like Wo ist der Bahnhof, but I knew enough so that when I saw this article, I hitchhiked into Paris. I found military government. I've always been an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I can see.
I've always been the kind of person that makes things happen.
Right.
And I thought, I think military government would be fascinating. So I found military government. I told them I was fluent in German, praying they wouldn't give me a test because, I wasn't really fluent. But very quick, 2 weeks later, they picked me up. A Jeep came and picked me up. And my first assignment was the Dachau concentration camp.
Wow.
Which still
was being liberated, or it had...
It had just been liberated. The bodies were still there.
Good grief.
But then I was transferred to a smaller town, and I became an interpreter. I quickly got a German-English dictionary.
Yes.
And within a week I was really fluent because I spent every day talking German to the people. We had to
on the ground.
We had to get the occupation. We had to get the.
Do you have a knack for language? Do you think?
I think so.
Some people do. I think.
Well, I've spent a lot of time in China and Japan and other countries.
Do you know Japanese or Chinese?
I can say a few words.
In 1957, I think it is, I went across to Europe to do it, to just travel. Go and travel and everything with no money, just out of university, and I decided to go out to the Middle East rather than go back to the September term, right? I said, I'll just go and travel, keep traveling. So I went and I hitchhiked through Yugoslavia and Greece and Turkey with little money and everything. I got a ride with a guy who was driving a truck, a very big, fancy truck, and he was an Armenian who had been born in Iran, right? And so he knew Armenian, he knew Farsi and that, and then he'd gone and done business in Europe. He was coming from Europe with a truckload of high-end stuff, taking it to Tehran, and he was speaking to me in ideogrammatic English, right? And he said that and it was just really good English, and he said that's about it. And he claimed to be able to speak 24 languages.
Well, Europeans do because they're surrounded.
24.
Yeah. And we are so isolated.
Yeah.
But I've been able to get by in France and in Japan and China with a few words. If you know how to say thank you and please, every nation appreciates that. We hear about ugly Americans in France who aren't liked by the French. If you try to speak a few words of French, they will adore you.
Yeah.
They always have.
It's
I spent a month. I rented a villa for a month in Provence and ended up making a film about it there.
Did you? You made a film about Provence?
I have a film. It's been my most popular film.
Which one was that? You made a number of films. Which one was that? What was the theme? What was the idea?
The title.
Was it nonfiction? I mean, it was
it's a documentary.
Yeah, right.
It's called A Taste of Provence. Art, history, and culture. And if viewers are interested, I think you can purchase it from Amazon for maybe $10. You can download it onto your computer.
Okay, good. Yeah,
it's a fabulous film.
You're too damned interesting, Sumner. You should be a little more boring. It'd be easier to figure out because we're going to run out of time. Because there's
we just started talking.
I know. But you're interested, and the thing is, you've been in communication from the beginning of there, and then you got with the Voice of America in Europe, and that was
Radio Free
Europe. I'm sorry, Radio Free Europe.
3 years at Radio Free Europe.
And you lived
but
in
I've
Europe.
always enjoyed technology.
Yeah.
And I think I told you when I was here last, I wrote this book.
Yeah.
I wrote an e-book because I love technology, and in an e-book you can put things like music. Now, here's a little ditty.
Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. There's a lot between your being at Radio Free Europe and this e-book. Because this is the most recent thing in the ever-going and ever-exciting and very interesting life of Sumner Jules Glimcher, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes from when you were in Radio Free Europe to this e-book. Now, you've been doing communication all along, have you not? You've been involved in communications practically your whole life.
I came back, I think I started I started an international voiced independent radio service for independent radio station. When I got back from Munich, there were 5,000 radio stations in America, and only 1,000 had network affiliation. So when Ed Murrow would be giving a report from London, he'd say, "This is Edwin R. Murrow in London, now back to CBS in New York." The biggest news station in New York at that time was WOR, which had 15 minutes of news every hour on the hour. So I went to my friend Bob Leader, who was then the general manager of WOR, and I said, "How would you like independent news, the voices of actual reporters?" Because I knew 36 actual reporters who reported for RFE, and I got them all together. This is another fascinating story, because I was planning to do this, and I had made a connection with a guy in Munich who wanted to leave RFE, because I decided if I was going to start this new service in New York, I needed a European
What year this is now again?
Partner. 1958.
58, okay, right.
So I get a letter from this guy, Noel, who's my friend, a Romanian, sends me a letter. He said, "Ava, his wife, and I are going on holiday to Rome. If you want to get in touch with me, I'll be in this hotel." 2 days later, I turn on the radio and I hear that Pope Pius died. Now, think. I had made up a list of the 50 top clear channel radio stations in America that were not network affiliate. A station WGN in Chicago, WR in New York, WJR in Detroit.
WJR.
My close friend is in Rome. They're about to elect a new pope. What do they do when the College of
Where the smoke goes up and all that.
Black smoke and white smoke, and that's so dramatic. And I've got the best,
visual, it's not
the
radio.
best reporter I know is in Rome.
So
I call Bob Leader at WOR. I say, "Bob, would you like direct reports from on the election?"
The decision, He said they'd jump at it.
Absolutely.
I
tell him, he puts on the phone a man named George Brown, who's news director. George says, "What can you get me?" I said, "I can get you whatever reports you need on the election of the new pope." He said, this is like
manna.
6 o'clock at night. He says, "I want 4 2-minute spots on the election of the Pope. If they haven't elected a new Pope, tell me what's happening in Rome." I said, "You got it." I said, "Book Master Control at 3 a.m. in the morning. Call NR, National Relay of AT&T. Book the underseas cable from Rome to London to New York to WOR Master Control. I need the cable for 10 minutes. And I said, George...
It's like booking transponder time on a satellite.
Which I knew how to do. I then put a call into Rome, right to Noel. And it's 6 o'clock at night. It's like 9 o'clock at night their time. And I get on the phone, I said, "Signor Bernard per favore," which is all my Italian.
That's pretty bad.
He's out to dinner.
Right.
Call me when you get back. He calls me back. He said, "What's up?" I tell him. I said, "I need 4 2-minute spots. I've booked RAI, the Italian broadcasting company.
RAI is huge,
Booked their studio for 9 o'clock their time in the morning, and it's going to be 3 o'clock our time in New York. I've booked the studio for 10 minutes. I tell Noel I want 4 2-minute spots. I go to sleep, and I'm doing all this, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to put it together, but I know it's going to work, right?" At 1 o'clock, I got the alarm set. I grab a cab down to 1440 Broadway, get up to Master Control. Bill Simmons, the engineer, is there. He says, "I hear we have a feed coming in from Rome." I said, "That's correct."
Did I hear you say that's coming over the transatlantic cable?
Yeah, they had just laid a transatlantic cable.
That sucker weighed about 170,000 tons of copper cable to get that thing across the Atlantic from Europe to the United States.
It had just been, the timing on this was amazing.
Right.
I said to Bill, "Make 2 tapes. You keep one and I keep one." And at 3 o'clock on the dot, I hear Noel's voice come
right
over
through.
the loudspeaker.
Yay!
Can you hear me? I said, you bet. I said, count to 10 and do each spot. And at the end of the spot, say, now back to WR in New York, which he does perfectly. We have 4 spots all recorded in 10 minutes. Bill gives me, if you remember, in the old days of radio, they had in radio studios large 10.5-inch reels, and the small portable tape recorders had 7-inch reels and 5-inch reels. Now, I have to take the tape. He's going to give me a tape, and I need that to feed out. By the way, I sent out telegrams to 50 stations of these top stations, and 20 of them within an hour sent me back telegrams saying they wanted to buy the service.
Right.
All right? I now grab the tape Bill gives me, and what he gives me is a 10.5-inch tape, a very large tape. I grab it, I take a cab, I come home, I grab a couple of hours sleep. At 8 o'clock, there was a place called Harvey's Radio, which later became a kind of a high-end audio system. But in 1958.
That's what you said.
6th Avenue had not been developed to those big buildings. Harvey's Radio was a little shop, an electronic shop, where people would buy tubes and transistors and rent things like tape recorders. So at 8 o'clock in the morning when they opened, I'm there to rent a tape recorder. They have tape recorders that have 7-inch reels.
As you said,
I've got a 10.5-inch reel.
How did you deal with that?
Well,
entrepreneurially, I hope,
I rent the tape recorder because I've got to get this tape to play on the tape recorder to all these 20 stations that are waiting for the news. Come back to my apartment. My wife and I had just had our first child. The phone is ringing off the hook because all these 20 stations want the news.
That's the number was connecting to that.
I run into the bedroom and there's a baby carriage. I take the 10.5-inch reel and scotch tape it to one wheel and take an empty 7-inch reel and scotch tape it.
You've got to be kidding.
And I'm rewinding the tape, the big tape onto the little tape. The phone is ringing off the hook. The baby is screaming for her breakfast.
Did you get this all down as a Hollywood movie? You should have. It would have been a great seller.
My wife is saying to the phone, Mr. Glimcher's in the editing
editing room with the baby carriage.
I finally get it done. I make 20 phone calls to feed the station. In those days, when you made a long-distance call,
it was a big deal.
You talked to an operator,
of course.
And the operator, when I finished, she said, "Sir, we have something called a conference call. If you do this again, you can do this one time and have all stations."
Probably just developing,
which was fabulous. And the news reports were fantastic. It took 17 days to elect the new pope. We were raking in money because every station
wanted it. Was paid.
And
it was hot.
And at the end of it, I said to Noel, this is our time. If you want to really start with me, give notice to RFE. Give them 2 weeks' notice. Move to London. Tell the BBC that we want to use their studio, and I will inform our stations that we're going to be on the air on a regular basis in 2 weeks. I told 20 stations that we'll be on the air. 3 of them signed up and agreed to buy our service. I booked the underseas cable every afternoon for 10 minutes at 3 o'clock. Noel was getting feeds from all these reporters all around Europe, because in those days, all the news was coming out of Europe. There was nothing from the East, nothing in Japan or China, nothing in South America.
Reuters got started with carrier pigeons.
Yeah.
But anyway, this goes back, this history.
This was one of the most exciting years.
You built that, and so you were in radio again. You're in that sort of thing.
It was the precursor of CNN. I had no...
Well, the CNN had to get a transponder. That cable, like I said before, it was 175,000 tons of copper cable to get from London to New York.
And
it was replaced by a transponder on Telstar that weighed about 150 pounds.
Well,
That's what they call ephemeralization, doing more with less, and that's heralding a whole new pattern of linking up cable television that was also emerging a few years out from when you did that baby carriage trick.
But I had no funds, and I had no business knowledge, and I had no business plan.
But you knew how to put things together.
I knew how to do
in an opportunistic kind of way, yeah.
I knew how to do things.
And you've been like that all your life, I think.
have.
You have, yeah. You're very innovative and very inventive.
I am the original entrepreneur.
The original entrepreneur, yeah.
I do things.
Yeah.
I'm now working on a new series that I'm presenting to PBS. I can't discuss it because it's at this
You've
point.
done a number of documentaries that have been fine. Now, you've worked in radio and you've worked in television, right? And you work in television, and you're now also, you're very adapting very, very well to somebody who's a bit older than that, to the kids that are coming along and everything, to the new technology that's emerging now exponentially in terms of what's come on after the internet and all the things that the internet has brought to us and so forth. You've adapted to it quite well and so forth.
Well, I love it.
It seems to me you're still involved.
Yeah, I'm now working on my third book.
A third book, an e-book.
Yeah, it's an e-book. This is the second book. This is the e-book. And the beautiful thing about electronic books is when you read one on an iPad, you can embed movies, sound, anything in it, so that a book is now greatly enriched with film and video and sound. Yeah. And I wrote this book, which I think I discussed with you on my last visit.
We did talk about, you were singing the praises of the whole thing, the whole process.
I love ebooks because a book can be so much richer if it has sound and music and
absolutely at a touch of a finger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
here, now maybe you can show us. Let's show what it is here.
So I'll give you a little
Let's
history.
try to get the camera in on this. I guess they're kind of in on it now. But you see, you're coming in this camera there.
All right.
Okay, show that.
So let me first explain what this will be.
You're anxious to show that, right?
This is an amazing record that totally eliminated syphilis in America after the war.
Yeah, right.
I was the manager of the Center for Mass Communication. This happened, I wasn't involved in this, but this is the organization that did, and I'm so proud of what this group did. The Surgeon General came to the Center for Mass Communication at Columbia and said, you guys know something about mass communication.
When is it? What date are you talking now?
After World War II.
After World War II.
1946, 7, 8.
Yeah, it was a big problem.
And said, one of the biggest problems in this country is syphilis.
Yeah,
we are spending millions of dollars taking care of the syphilis.
Was that pre-penicillin?
Insane.
Was that pre-penicillin? They didn't have penicillin?
Well, pre-penicillin.
Yeah.
Penicillin.
Penicillin was a godsend,
which saved my life. By the way, when I was shot and I ended up in the hospital in Wales, the doctor, chief of staff, looked at my leg and said, gangrene is setting in. We're going to have to amputate your leg.
Oh, boy.
And I said, is there nothing that we can do? And he said, well, the Brits have just invented a new antibiotic. Let's try that.
Thank God for antibiotics.
I would not have my left leg.
Right.
So penicillin now discovered in this country that it could cure syphilis.
Yeah, right.
So the Surgeon General
among other things,
said, how can we tell people en masse that we can find out if they have syphilis, and if they do have it, we can cure them? So they came to the Center for Mass Communication. Who wrote this song?
Wait a minute. Okay. All right, we'll play the song. Here, you can pick it up on your mic. Yeah.
An ignorant cowboy went out on a spree, and oh, what an ignorant cowhand was he. He had a few drinks and his head was a whirl, and he ended up in the arms of a girl called Katie. An ignorant cowboy, an ignorant cowboy. Now that cowboy was awfully handsome, they say, as I'm sure he could tell from his mirror each day. But many weeks later, one morning he saw a rash on his face, and he cried with a roar, what is it? That ignorant cowboy, that ignorant cowboy. That cowboy was
I'm not going to, it runs only 3 minutes. But this song
became very popular.
No, I don't want to play it all because we have limited time.
Yeah.
But this song got, people were told, people were throwing nickels into jukeboxes to play this.
Yeah.
They wore out 1,500 of them in San Francisco in a matter of weeks. Everybody learned that a simple blood test would let them know if they had syphilis. And if they had syphilis, that could be cured in 2 weeks.
And there's something that could be done, whereas in the past it was a death knell or a terrible knell of disaster pending.
Millions of dollars. It cured.
And lies. And limbs.
It cured hundreds of thousands of lives. Just through penicillin, through mass communication.
Right, through mass communication. Now, let me also say that thing where you touch it with your finger has the record play, and it's got even the label and everything like that, and that's part of a book. Like you have a book, and it seems like the book has pages and everything. Sometimes you have pictures and things, but this has multimedia embedded in the book, right? Which I guess a lot of people are just familiar with, but that's a breakthrough.
This is... by touching...
Show it to the camera while you do that, if you can.
By touching different dots, you can go to different chapters here. Now, here's Ken Galbraith.
Did you know him?
I knew Ken. Ken and I were close friends.
Yeah.
I met and worked with 3 amazing guys at Harvard. Galbraith, the economist, was one of the most... I interviewed him when he was 90 years old.
God bless him,
I also worked with a man named John King Fairbank, Harvard.
Oh, China.
Harvard's expert on China.
Yeah, right.
And with Edwin O. Reischauer,
China, no? In Japan.
Not only was he expert on Japan, Kennedy imported him as the ambassador to Japan.
That's right, yeah.
And I produced programs with Galbraith in China and with Reischauer on Japan. I interviewed Ken when he was 90, and let me see if I can play.
This is all touch screen. Now this touch screen thing is really coming with the smartphones and everything.
Yeah.
It's just amazing how.
I got a telegram.
There you go. Show it. Yeah.
From Harvard.
Now that's coming out of the book.
Working at what was for me a very handsome salary of $1,800 a year. When suddenly I got an offer from Harvard, a telegram, offering me an instructorship at Harvard for guess what? $2,400 a year. And I had no intention of accepting it because I was completely happy at Berkeley and Davis. But I had heard that you often got an increase in pay from flashing a counter offer, an offer from some other institution. So I took my telegram into the dean and showed him the telegram, thinking he would give me an increase in pay. He read the telegram, looked at me and said, "Take it, Galbraith, you're not worth that."
He could do shtick. He's funny, yeah.
He says, "Take it, Galbraith. You're not worth that to what?"
Right.
That's
funny.
how Galbraith.
That's like Mel Brooks. Yeah, right.
But isn't it amazing?
No, and it's amazing the technology where you got all these things embedded in it, and it's all multimedia of the highest order. They have a thing on the Science Channel. And they had the 100 most important gadgets over history and that kind of thing, the light bulb and all that. And they had at the top as number one, like remember the hit parade? We used to have the hit parade with the best music or the leading song. The best thing, well, it was similar to this, but they said the major thing, and that took into account the computer and the mouse and all the kind of things and electricity and all these major events of development of technology. And the major one they put in class all by itself was the smartphone. Yeah. This looks like a smartphone.
Well,
and this is a step.
I mean, when you're just a still picture, this is a photograph. Of course, I once had hair.
Yeah, I remember.
The guy in the
I
middle,
once had hair, yes.
The guy in the middle is me. That's my bride. And this is in Radio Free Europe. Do you know Source in Austria, one of the finest places to ski I've ever been?
No, I don't know it. I've never been. Yeah.
Well, Source, here we are skiing, après skiing. But to be able to take pictures and have them
come up full screen and very high quality, very high resolution, all that sort of thing, and you can just make a book like that. Yeah.
So
and this is like a precursor or akin to the smartphones that they have now, and that's all. The capability is all going exponential.
Yeah.
I mean, double upon double upon double. It's amazing.
Well, I love technology.
And you've been in on it all.
I love technology. Maybe it's because I did learn something about science when I was in school. I worked, just before I went into the Army, I worked at Raytheon. I may have mentioned that.
Yeah, a major company,
And we were working on radar, and I know something about technology.
Yeah.
So I love the latest technology. I do all my editing. I do all my own editing when I'm making films. I have a very large iMac.
Yeah.
And with Final Cut Pro, which is a wonderful editing
system. You find that convenient. Have you been doing have you done much multimedia film or cabled television development that involved editing skills and so forth in your career over the long haul?
Yes, I do.
You've done editing, right?
I do my own.
You did that one with the baby carriage. That was sort of a quick cut edit, like that. But you know what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, well, if any viewers happen to download A Taste of Provence, which is really quite a remarkable film.
Okay.
I recorded it. I recorded the sound. I recorded the music.
Recorded it in what? On what? And with what piece of technology? Film?
No, on video.
On video.
On a camcorder.
Okay.
So I recorded everything you see, including the music. I then wrote the narration. I edited the film. I wrote I did the narration myself. I read the narration. I added the music. It's a beautiful piece of work. I've shown it 3 times at the National Arts Club, where people paid, on the first occasion, 150 people came and spent $70, I think, to see the film, hear me talk about it, and have dinner. And then Alden James, the president of the National Arts Club, thought it was such a hit that he had me show it a year later. Another 100 people came.
Wow.
And 2 years later, another 100. So
it's amazing. That's a lot.
350 people have seen it, loved it, and paid money, like $70 a person.
Boy, you could have. Yeah, okay, that's really good. How many of those films, or do you call it a film? Or it's a production or something. How many have you done? It's a documentary.
Right.
How many have you made over?
About 3 dozen.
3 dozen documentaries.
And
length, average length, what were some of the subject areas, that kind of thing. And you knew George Stoney was a great documentarian.
George was a close
And he was
friend.
the father of public access institutionally, so he's somebody we celebrate here at MNN,
Well, I met George in 1963. We were
early.
Both teaching at Columbia. I was teaching television. He was teaching film. So I have about, I don't know, a couple dozen. I've never counted, but I have excerpts from a number of my films. If you go to YouTube and type in my name, you can see them. I have one. If anybody wants to learn about my book, there are 2 suggestions. First is go to YouTube and type in
Glimcher?
A Filmmaker's Journal by Sumner, Jules, Glimcher, and you'll see me talking about the book. Or you can go to Amazon. It's got several 5-star reviews by people that people who really. The book is interesting. Filmmaker's Journal.
Yeah, and you did this. So you've been in the Where do you think we're going, Sumner, in terms of communication? Things are moving. It was going hyperbolic in our early days or something like that. It was going hyperbolic and everything, and it's going now exponential. Where in the heck is it heading for? They just had a major conference here since the last time you and I spoke in June, where they were talking about the future of cybernetics and so forth. Not only of cybernetics and information technology, but robotics are coming on now. Robotics are developing. Hans Moravec and the people at Carnegie Mellon, Pittsburgh, and that the robotics are coming, and the whole productive process and the things. It's not only just information, algorithmic and everything like that, but it's also robotics. And it's coming, and that they're beginning to think that we're coming to the end of a period in history, not just a period in history, but we may be coming to a moment of quality. You did quantitative analysis, qualitative chemistry, and that a qualitative transformation in terms evolutionarily. That we're coming to. We've been here 200,000 years. The Homo sapiens species, we're coming to the end of that and coming into a new relation. Oh no, I'm sort of, that conference was taking that up. They had Kurzweil and the major thinkers of cybernetics and where all this, and that's all extensions of consciousness and tool making and technology. Where do you think we're heading? If we look out 5, 10, 20, 100 years, have you given any thought to that?
Well,
or what do you think is the future of things based in terms of understanding that future in technological communication terms?
Harold, I fear that I have some fairly negative feelings about where we're going politically, nationally, internationally. Do you know half the people in the country do not believe we have a crisis in weather?
I know, yeah,
I mean,
climate, yeah.
We know scientifically that the oceans are rising.
Yeah.
We know that they're rising, will rise 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6
They just reported
feet.
they thought 3. Somebody projected a major projection, 3 feet. Yeah.
Within 100 years.
Yeah.
So.
Well, 100 years. Yeah, okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
so
sorry.
What concerns me, I have 3 daughters.
Yeah.
I have 2 twin granddaughters.
Right.
My daughters, in midlife, may see some major changes because they may have another 50 years or so to go.
Yeah.
I figure I have 10 or 20.
But
how about the grandchildren?
Yeah, right. They got it.
Who could have 100
And there's
years?
a lot of life extension going on.
Yeah.
They're living. My daddy died buried on his 48th birthday, and that was the average age of a man born in 1899 was 48. It's 48. It's now 78 and growing. Yeah, that's another thing. But anyway, back to your feelings about climate change.
You're talking about where we're going technically, and I'm wondering if we're still going to be here.
Well, that's a serious question when you get, because on the negative side of the technological extension of consciousness, the capability to make the world other than in an Eden-like sense we were when we were embedded in nature, which is the technology is a means of building the earth, in the words of Gordon Childe or something like that. The weapon systems have become species lethal. Apparently, from the modeling, that the Trident submarines and the exponential increasing, that apparently we have weapon systems, including chemical, wave weapons, some of the things out of Black Ops and so we don't even know about, despite Mr. Snowden and all the rest of it that's making some of these things available. But apparently, if they were unleashed like they were in the Second War, ancient hatreds and all that sort of thing, irrationality, it would mean the end of the Homo sapiens species. It would come to an end.
In 50 years.
And it's only been like that since about 1970 that we've crossed that line. And this time is unique.
In 50 years, the Arabs and the Israelis cannot agree on a peace process. We have 7,000 to 10,000 drones that can just wipe out everything without human beings involved.
Well, we'd have to get quite a few. Yeah, so I understand. Yeah. So you could ask a question. Are you optimistic, pessimistic for the human prospect?
Certainly pessimistic.
Are you seriously that way?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, it's a pretty heavy burden to have to carry because it's not only the end, it's not like the end of your nation or something like historically or the end of a system of feudal organization or slavery or some big institution that's going to be changed quantitatively. It's qualitative. It would be the end of conscious evolution in the universe that has been, that this moment we come into. Isaac Asimov, the famous fellow, did the laws of robotics. He said, this is the defining generation qualitatively, that there's something new. There's a tremendous capability of taking care of everybody. The questions can be addressed. We have a technological, with entrepreneurs who can use a baby carriage to make that thing like you did, with cleverness and design and good design, or a transponder that can carry what took 175,000 tons of copper cable to do with a 100-pound transponder. There are possibilities of providing for everybody in a new and unique way, which could be like liberation that we haven't had the capability of.
But we have an evil side, and one nuclear weapon can be exploded in New York City that could start the beginning of the end of civilization.
Well, that would set off a lot of irrational, one thing, we can't stand it. All of the ancient hurts and pains and everything, and the institutional structures we've inherited out of history are simply not adequate to what the future requires in terms of bringing, let's say, universal justice within an ecological context that you and I can understand. We can understand it ideologically. We have a capability, the system that's in place and the institutions won't allow to be realized among the human society, nor one taking into the ecology that the future requires or allows newly now. So we've got outdated institutions that we seem not to be able to get over. The politicians are falling all over themselves, reifying the outdated structures that we've inherited out of history that's been qualitatively and calling for a qualitative transformation in evolutionary terms. So it's a moment of unique, as Asimov said, this is the defining generation, not in some historical sense, but in a cosmic sense. I don't know if you can get your mind around that or not, or what do you think? When you say negative, strongly negative or pessimistic, it's not just another lost battle or something.
It's too grand a scale.
Too grand a scale, and yet it seems to be the reality, and a lot of it has to do with the use of technology or a design that could be relevant to, let's say, we can liberate the human society within an ecological context, or we can stop the evolutionary process, this generation that's upcoming now.
We can wipe out the world.
Well, I don't know if we can wipe out the world.
One terrorist can perform an act, I think, that can lead to the end of civilization.
The end of civilization is no doubt.
Yeah,
we were able to do that in the Cuban. You remember the Cuban Missile? Of course. I've never so life was scared. I was just they came within a hair's breadth of blowing up civilization. But there would have been some scraggling human beings survive. Now, since about 1970, there wouldn't be a single human being survive. There would be life forms at the bottom of the ocean. Evolution, in a large sense, might have another couple billion years to pick up or something. I don't think we can destroy life, but we can destroy Homo sapiens species. And that's never been the case in the past.
Yeah, the power for evil is greater than it's ever been.
And the power for good, both.
Oh.
It's a two-headed sword.
Yeah.
The Chinese have a saying, spare you from living in interesting times, because it's hell to pay when you're living in really interesting times. It's not just steady state or stasis, But it's an incredible time to be alive. 10,000 generations. Our generation and the generations that are following. I got grandchildren too, and people do. Anyway, so we only got a couple minutes left. So what words of wisdom can you do, or what do you think, or advice you could do? Media is important, is it not?
Well,
and being able to get people educated, massive good education about the possibilities.
I can I can give you my best advice.
Please.
Which is very simple.
Mm-hmm.
Live life to the fullest every day that you're alive.
Really kick out the jams, huh?
Do the best you can.
Yeah.
There's so much good that can be done.
Right.
There is life is so fascinating.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
The possibilities are unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
You should enjoy every minute. I think that today, with medicine in the role it is possible for people to live well into the hundreds.
Yeah, life extension,
120.
Yeah.
In good health.
In vibrant health.
Yeah, I have a great friend. He's 92.
Yeah,
The most amazing man. Most amazing. I'm showing a film on him.
Good.
If anybody's interested, I'm showing it on September 12th. If anybody's interested.
Where?
At the
Academy?
National Academy of Television Arts and
You're
Science.
involved with that and have been, right?
I run a series called Meet the Filmmaker on September 12th at 6 p.m.
Over?
Go to the National Academy of Television Arts and
As on
Sciences.
6th Avenue, right?
It's on Broadway and 37th Street.
Right.
And you'll see one of the most amazing men I've ever met. 92 years old, living life in the fullest.
Good for that. I'm glad to hear that.
Great guy.
You've made a film out of it?
No, a friend made the film.
Is the film out and about?
It's called Sam's War, and Sam, who was not only shot during World War II, but was a POW, has had the most amazing life.
Mm-hmm.
And in a 60-minute film, you'll see that film at the National TV Academy.
That's the same thing who give out the Emmys, isn't it? The same institution.
1375 Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
1375 Broadway. 6 o'clock on September 12th.
Okay, September 12th in the year is 2013 of the Christian era.
Yeah.
Okay, just to get the timing straight and everything like that. And that will you'll be hosted by, and then you'll have the pleasure of having that all introduced to the wit and wisdom of none other than Sumner, Jules, Glimcher, a major person who's been able to give some understanding of the human condition within a very funny and also a very intelligent understanding of the human condition and expanding the possibilities for making that condition move in a way that might help move things, the dial in the right direction. And I thank you for all of that in such a very, 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 very well-led life, Sumner. Thank you very much for coming in.
My pleasure.
It's so good to talk to you. It always is. And that question's still on the table about are we going to make it or not, you know? And
there's no answer. We don't know.
Yeah, no. But you say, would your scale be 50%? 50%? Let's say you got the choice. Let's say we got a choice, humanity. What should we do? Should we liberate everybody and create an Eden of ecological sanity with all of the creatures and so forth? Or should we just wipe it all out? We got the choice. What do you think? Maybe we should put a plebiscite out and let the citizens vote on that.
I have no idea.
Well, I think you've got a lot of ideas that could serve that in the right direction. But one of the tyrannies of all things is time. We've run out of time for this section. Thank you enormously for coming in and for all the good work. And we, on Conversations, and everybody here at MNN invite you to tuning in. We'll be coming back again next week. That's it for now. Thanks for Drew for the help of putting this together and for all the people. And thanks very much, Sumner.
My pleasure.
Coming back again tomorrow, please do tune in and keep track of this young man. He's a comer. This Sumner Jules Glimcher is a real comer.